Heya, it's me, Ratztro, and you've caught me at an awkward time. You see, it's been about 10 years since the last Mario Kart game released, and I've been getting so desperate for a new game that I've started role-playing my dreams for it. Now imagine this, Mario Kart, but he drives around the world. Oh. The wait for the next entry into the Mario Kart series after the release of Mario Kart 8 was excruciatingly long. A decade long to be exact. I've been counting. 1, 2, 3. And during that time, the only new Mario Kart content we got was Mario Kart 8 with a face filter over it and some DLC tracks for said Mario Kart game that looked straight out of Angry Birds Go. And even just the base game was starting to show its age visually, so to say my expectations for what a new Mario Kart game would look like were a bit all over the place would be an understatement. If you were to say my expectations for a new Mario Kart game were a lot all over the place, that would probably be about right. But if we're being real, what am I gonna do? Not be excited for a new Mario Kart? So in January of 2025, when everybody was waiting for Nintendo to unveil that their newest system would hopefully be stronger than an Android phone, they were kind enough to show off just a little drop of what both their new console would be, and, more importantly, what the new Mario Kart would look like. Yep, that's Mario. After seeing that initial teaser for the newest Mario Kart game, I was so convinced that Nintendo was going to knock it out of the park with this one. They were going to make that agonising 11-year-long wait worth it and finally give us the stunning visuals and mind-blowing innovation that the kart racing genre desperately needed. And now that I've played the game, do I think they did that? No, not really. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is Nintendo's best-selling game of all time, in my heart at least. But even before 8 was a staple of every household with a Nintendo Switch, or god forbid a Wii U, Mario Kart was still a main system seller for Nintendo consoles, which meant Nintendo were relying on this new Mario Kart to convince everybody to buy the Nintendo Switch successor. Not a hard task, you may be thinking. I mean, it's Mario Kart, who's not going to buy Mario Kart? And normally you would be right. Good job. But the developers of this new game were stuck in a bit of a strange situation that they would never have really needed to account for before, considering they haven't made a new game in like 11 years. They needed to develop a Mario Kart game that people actually needed a reason to buy. You see, the Nintendo Switch 2 is backwards compatible, meaning I can just pop in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and have the option of playing 98 tracks of Mario Kart using 50 different characters, or playing battle modes 8 courses with 5 different game modes. And this is a lot of content. Like, so much content that I felt the need to emphasize it by animating myself emphasizing it. So the newest Mario Kart game couldn't rely on just being another Mario Kart with a new gimmick if they're feeling silly. It needed to massively switch up the way Mario Kart plays, while still being within the realms of what people expect from a Mario Kart game. And so, we got everybody's favourite video game gimmick that is constantly shoved in places that it doesn't need to be because shareholders saw how well Breath of the Wild did back in 2017 and decided that every other game needs to be like that now. An open world! Yay! God, somebody needs to start walking around these development offices with a big cartoon hammer and just bludgeoning anybody who dares utter the words open world together. Because I can't possibly imagine any other game series that will benefit less from an open world format than a fucking Super Mario Kart racer. I'm prepared to argue my case. The open world is shoehorned into every single aspect of the game, but it makes the most sense to start by talking about the Grand Prix since, you know, that's the main reason anybody plays Mario Kart, I think. Shut up. But before I get into it, I'm going to point out something that I noticed very quickly while playing this game, and you might notice it too based on how much random bullshit I have to find weird ways to segue into during this video. Mario Kart World just kind of feels like the development team all listened to the pitch presentation for the game, nodded along like good little Nintendogs, and then split off into 10 separate divisions to work on completely different things for the next 5 to 10 years without ever communicating with each other, and then they all just threw their creations into a pile to be turned into a game at the end. I would have preferred the Rusty Needle. So you end up with stuff like the half-assed open world, the food items that unlock costumes for some reason, the stickers that are barely visible on any cart unless you squint real hard, and the unlockable characters that are unlocked through an RNG-based item for some reason, as well as several other things that I'll touch on. So watch me rant about a stupid Nintendo game for frankly way too long, and then like and maybe subscribe if... I guess. Mario Kart Grand Prix always follow the same basic format. You have 8 Grand Prix, each with 4 tracks, and each track has about 3 laps unless the developers forgot how to count that day. And when you finish all 3 laps, you press next course, and wouldn't you know it, you go to the next course and do the 3 laps on that track, rinse and repeat. Just normal racing game stuff. Well, Nintendo thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun if, instead of going to the next course, you had to drive to that course instead? Now, that doesn't sound too bad on paper, until you think of the logistics of it. To make this gameplay gimmick work in a way that doesn't make the player feel the urge to throw themselves from the roof of their house, you need to essentially design 3 extra tracks per Grand Prix that can keep the player engaged while they drive between the real tracks, whilst also making sure that these tracks aren't too long, or else the Grand Prix will take like 2 whole episodes of iCarly to complete. Can you guess what Nintendo didn't do? Go on. Instead of fully committing to this gameplay style, which could have worked if they really wanted it to, they instead decided to put 1/10 of the effort into these in-between tracks as they put into the real tracks, which leads to basically all of them just being straight lines, with maybe 1 or 2 turns in a rail that takes you nowhere if you're lucky. And if that doesn't sound mind-numbing enough,
we're gonna have to come over to your house and kill you.
They obviously realised near the end of development that the in-betweens make each Grand Prix last way too long for the target audience of YouTube Shorts watching 6-year-olds, so instead of doing the smart thing and making them optional maybe, or even better, just cutting their losses and removing them, they instead made the incredibly smart, intelligent, genius-minded decision to make them cut into the first few laps of the actual tracks that they spent actual development time and brainpower designing, which means you spend 75% of your time in the Grand Prix driving on these glorified Subway Surfer courses, and you don't even get to properly experience the good tracks that everybody plays Mario Kart for. You know, maybe this guy has a point. When I was first playing the Grand Prix, I thought a majority of the tracks were pretty mediocre because I would drive on them through the first lap, spot a potential new route to take during the next lap, and then whoops! There's no next lap. The race is already over. Time to roleplay a drunk truck driver swerving in and out of my lane. Yes! But after completing the Grand Prix and taking some time away from the game to blow off steam by blowing steam into the faces of small children, I went into the Versus race and just played each course with the full 3 laps, as God intended. And they were all really fun tracks, with a lot of unique track designs, besides a few stinkers.
What the hell's going on over here?
Oh, Frank's trying to kill himself.
Which just makes me even more upset because they could have just had this as an option for the Grand Prix instead of making me go and do it myself, and it would have made the game way better. Where the open world actually does work though is in the new game mode, Knockout Tour. Knockout Tour is basically like if the in-between tracks were the entire Grand Prix.
What?
In Knockout Tour, you do a rolling start at any of the tracks, but instead of racing through the track, you immediately peel out and just drive. You keep your foot in the gas and drive across the entire open world, trying to stay high enough in the rankings to avoid being eliminated by the omniscient entity known as Shigeru Miyamoto.
Guys, I think I found a glue!
Knockout Tour is sort of like a constant adrenaline rush because one small slip up and your 10-minute long first place lead will be taken by a bastard cataquack with a single red shell and no friends and no job. The Knockout Tours are pretty fun, sometimes. They aren't perfect because they do tend to suffer from the same downsides as the in-between tracks in the Grand Prix, considering, you know, they are just the in-between tracks from the Grand Prix, but if you weren't allowed to stop. But somehow it feels a lot more enjoyable to just mindlessly hold down the A button when it's in a full game mode dedicated to that gameplay, rather than being forced to race on a neutered version of the real tracks.
Pinwheels in my head! Voices!
The open world isn't the only thing this game added to make its gameplay more unique though. Look, Mario can drive on walls now. But we already got that in the last game! Mario Kart games normally have some kind of unique gimmick that sets their gameplay apart from the other Mario Kart games, which, when paired with the expected graphical leap that usually comes with these new games, is usually enough to convince people to open up their savings and fork over $400 for a new console and a new Mario Kart game. Double Dash had the 2-seater carts, Wii had Funky Kong, 7 had throwing yourself from large heights directly into an equally large body of water, and 8 had anti-gravity, so despite World having that whole open world thing going on, they still wanted to make the actual racing stand apart from the other games, which is why they added parkour.
something.
The parkour gimmick gives you the ability to ride on rails and drive up walls to reach new branching paths and shortcuts, or just for aura farming purposes. The parkour sounds pretty good on paper, and to be honest, it's pretty good in action too. It's a really interesting way to give tracks a lot of diverging paths and replayability beyond just adding mushroom shortcuts on every corner, and it also leaves a lot of opportunities for the player to experiment with a bunch of different routes and time trials if they have no job or commitments or friends outside of playing stupid Nintendo games. The thing is though, it's more often than not just relegated to a couple of guardrails that don't really go anywhere, or railings on the outside of turns that have no real purpose for anybody with a brain because it's just slower than taking the turn normally. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I've seen cars before. When executed well, you get stuff like Whistletop Summit, where it's very obvious that one of the course designers had a Jimmy Neutron brain blast when they heard the word train and started doing some master builder shit. There's just so many different rails and wall riding sections littered across the entire course that let you just do some bullshit. And it's so fucking sick to flip from rail to wall to wall to rail to rail to train while screeching like a chimp the entire time. Huh? That was cool. Then you have this Sonic Lost World type of level design in Peach Beach, but like, if that was a good game. This salty speedway path that feels like smoking crack, but as a car. Or this game's equivalent of Excite Bike Arena that absolutely should not have made it past even the earliest of concept stages. The track designs in general are pretty hit or miss, to be honest. Not necessarily because they're bad, but just because so many never really make use of the parkour, so going from something like Wario Stadium that might have had the single greatest glow up of the century when compared to its abysmal dogshit 64 iteration. Straight into Airship Fortress, which is basically just the DS version again, is just like, it's not bad, but just like, why not add a little extra to make it stand out more against its original version, exactly like you did with several other returning tracks? Hell, even the Mario circuits from the SNES or whatever returned, and as lame as those tracks usually are, having them be connected together as one single course was kind of a cool addition. This is a good way to pivot into my other main issue with a couple of returning tracks. They don't feel that necessary. Desert Hills from the DS is just, it's such an course. It could have been replaced by like Dry Ruins or something. And why is Moo Moo Meadows here? We already got Moo Moo Meadows in the last game. Why not give us something we haven't seen in a while, like a revamped Moo Moo Farm from the N64? The tracks do still tend to be fun though, cause it's Mario Kart, that's a given. The new Mario Bros circuit is pretty neat, and the desert theme makes it stand out from the other circuit tracks. Sky High Sundae is actually so fun in this game. It's just got so much rail grinding and wall hopping, and it's pretty obvious from playing it both here and in the Mario Kart 8 DLC that it was just
Why do birds suddenly appear?
The new Rainbow Road's also super fun. I mean, it's a pretty basic course layout wise, but the combination of course themes from the other Rainbow Roads, combined with the music that transitions through each section and the big send-off at the end of it, makes it feel like a big love letter to the series, and it's really cool to see. And that is exactly what I would want out of a Rainbow Road that the game makes such a big deal out of when you unlock it. Huh? That was cool. I mentioned the transitioning music in Rainbow Road and how cool it is, but you want to know what's even cooler? The music just kinda does this in the entire game. The soundtrack for Mario Kart World is so fucking insane, and I can't get enough of it. There's orchestral renditions of so many Mario Kart track themes, even ones that aren't even in the game, but it also had new renditions of just ordinary Mario music from the mainline games, like a stupidly faithful reggae arrangement of the Super Mario Bros. 3 ground theme. Which is pretty cool. When you drive between different courses in Knockout Tour and Grand Prix, they created specific transitional pieces of music for moving between the different courses, which means that it doesn't just abruptly cut off my Gusty Garden Galaxy music to play some Mario Circuit type beat and scare me to death. The open world can also be accessed as its own separate game mode in the main menu, so you can just drive around the island, but honestly, why would you? This is definitely the part of the game that feels the most unfinished and a bit pointless. They threw a ton of random little challenges into the open world to try to make it seem like there's any type of content in the game, but when you actually get down to playing them, they aren't very engaging and only unlock these stickers that can technically be put in your cart, but are never really very visible at all.
A great style.
The open world challenges also have, like, no real way to track where they are, or how many of them you need to do, which is ridiculous. The most you get is a little counter on the bottom of the map that says how many you've already done, and where the completed ones are, but that's it. You still gotta drive around aimlessly to find any new ones, and you'll never know if there aren't any new ones, because the game just doesn't tell you. And even then, if you do manage to complete absolutely every single thing in the open world, what do you get? I got scurvy. The most obvious way I can see the open world having any reason for existing really is if they gave you the character skins and NPC characters as rewards for completing certain challenges as an alternative way to unlock them, because why do I have to rely on someone else getting the new Kamek item, then getting lucky enough to give me a new guy instead of a duplicate? It's just gambling, but instead of winning $1 million bajillion dollars, you win Spike. Who's Spike? But speaking of the characters, the big graphical overhaul in this game was aimed at making the characters look way more cartoony by finally letting them ditch their GameCube era designs for far more heavily stylized ones, which I love. And it really gives them a lot more personality in the way they just kind of look and emote. So with this big shift in art style and the massive amount of development time that they surely had to work on this game, I would have thought that they would use this as an opportunity to adapt some fan favourites into this new art style as playable characters, like Diddy Kong, Funky Kong, Diddy Kong, maybe even Diddy Kong. Please. Come on man, you could add all these stupid little NPCs but not Diddy Kong. There's literally just the cow from Moo Moo Meadows, but we can't get Donkey Kong's little guy. I'm fine with the weird little freaks being playable because it's kind of fun, but still, justice for Yeah, that's fair. They also added character costumes, as I mentioned a moment ago, which is a really cool way to replace the ability to customize your little homunculus cart, but I cannot, for the life of me, understand why they made the character costumes only unlock when you eat these weird little bags of food. Like, I understand the concept because it incentivizes you to explore the map, but when you have over 120 different costumes you unlock, all of which span over most of the main cast, that each require you to be playing as the character and collect a specific food item which can only be found in a specific area of the map to even have a chance of unlocking it, it just ends up being easier to find a Google Sheets document with them all listed in a row and spend an afternoon going through the list and unlocking each of them, which it just kind of beats the whole point of having them be unlocked through exploration in the first place. If only there was a game mode that has built-in challenges, with its main issue being the noticeable lack of rewards for completing these challenges, and would therefore benefit from the costumes being unlockable there, fixing 2 issues with the game in one go. Pfft, yeah right, maybe when I'm dead. The battle mode in this game falls into the same trap as the one in Mario Kart 8 for Wii U, in the way that it feels like an afterthought. It only had 2 game modes at launch, Classic Balloon Battle and Coin Runners, with them dropping an extra Bob-on Battlefield 10 months after the game released, which is cool and all, but like, you've been working on this game since sometime in 2017 and nobody in the dev team thought, maybe we should make sure to have all the battle modes ready for launch, especially considering this game was actually meant to be released in Switch 1 and they ended up delaying it to Switch 2, leaving them more dev time for them to ignore the battle mode shaped elephant in the room, but I digress. They also did the Mario Kart 8 thing of only having a couple of maps, all of which are just normal maps repurposed for battle mode, but honestly, these kind of work a lot better for battle mode than the Mario Kart 8 courses did, because at least some of these feel like they were built specifically to work as battle mode courses if you squint your eyes and tilt your head a bit. All in all, the battle mode is still a fully competent part of the game that's fun to hop into for 10 minutes before remembering that you don't care about battle mode, and you only played it so people who also never cared about battle mode wouldn't comment to ask why you didn't talk about battle mode. I feel like I've ragged way too much on this game considering I actually do enjoy it quite a bit. I just find a sort of sadistic joy in ripping into things that I find fun. But I have one more thing to complain about, and it's the online mode. You may be thinking, well, Ratztro, how can Nintendo possibly mess up an online mode? They've already got a very good one in Mario Kart 8, just copy its homework a bit. Well, here's how they can mess up the online mode. Yep, you're pretty frequently forced to play those god-awful in-between tracks instead of any actual races, and nope, there's not an option to turn them off. You just have to pray nobody in your lobby is sick enough in the head to select those.
We have an ice dweller.
Which is a very tough thing to pray for because, come on, we're talking about Nintendo fans here. We're all sick in the head. I already mentioned this before, but I love the revamped visual style that seems to be their new Mario art style in general going forward, based on the fact that Wonder is also the first 2D Mario game to look good in over a decade.
What is that?
I'm a sucker for stylized art styles, which is made funnier by the fact that I'm a Sonic fan. So I want to mention again that the character designs have all been tweaked to be way more stylized, and the animation is super bouncy and fun, which makes it a bit hard to go back to Mario Kart 8 because it makes me realise just how much the graphics in that game are really starting to show their age. The Donkey Kong redesign was definitely the biggest glow up though, because now he can have more than one facial expression. As much as I love Rare DK and his fluoride stare, I just can't help but be happy that his face surgery was a success. Mario Kart World is by no means a perfect game, but it's by no means a bad game either. It has its place in the Mario Kart series, with both its open world and parkour succeeding at making it stand out as both unique and innovative within not just the Mario Kart series, but the racing genre as a whole, even with its numerous rough edges. Mario Kart World feels like there's a bunch of good ideas that were tossed into the game without much thought into how they would mesh together, and it makes the game, oddly, feel a bit rushed despite clearly having a lot of polish and tons of content. But still, at the end of the day, it's still a Mario Kart game, and a fun one at that. And hey, it'll be around for at least the rest of the Switch 2's lifespan, so I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo were able to give us some DLC before the release of their next console. You know, just so we don't have another Mario Kart 8 situation. I'm you from the future, and I have bad news.